American workers, and ultimately, this has to be a part of that. Right, let's go to Glenn.
Two quick questions. First of all, let's have some statistics. There have been a lot of studies out there that don't show a correlation between low-skilled immigration and the loss of jobs for native workers. Cite for me, if you could, one or two studies with specific numbers that prove the correlation between those two things, because your entire policy is based on that. And secondly, I had sources that told me about a month ago that you guys have sort of elbowed infrastructure out of the way to get immigration on the legislative queue. Tell me why this is more important than infrastructure.
Well, the latter statement isn't true. I think the most recent study I would point to is the study from George Borjas that he just did about the Mariel boat lift. And he went back and re-examined and opened up the old data and talked about how it actually did reduce wages for workers who were living there at the time. And Borjas has, of course, done enormous amounts of research on this, as has the Peter Kirsanow on the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, as has Steve Camarada at the Center for Immigration Studies, and so on and so on.
Sciences, engineering, and medicine.
Right, and the recent study said that as much as $300 billion a year may be lost as a result of our current immigration system in terms of folks drawing more public benefits than they're paying in. But let's also use common sense here, folks. At the end of the day, why do special interests want to bring in more low-skilled workers, and why historically...
I'm not asking for common sense, I'm asking for specific
Well, I think it's very
statistical
clear,
data.
Glenn, that you're not asking for common sense, but if I could just answer... If I could just answer your question, I named the studies,
Let me
Glenn.
just finish the question.
Glenn,
Tell me
I named the
statistic.
studies.
No,
I named the studies.
I asked you for a statistic. Can you tell me
Glenn,
how many?
Maybe we'll make a carve-out in the bill
Yeah.
that says the New York Times can hire all the low-skilled, less-paid workers they want from other countries, and see how you feel then about low-wage substitution. This is a reality that's happening in our country. Maybe it's time we had compassion, Glenn, for American workers. President Trump has met with American workers who've been replaced by foreign workers, and ask them how this has affected their lives. Look at, I just told you.
Low-skilled jobs that Americans might otherwise have. Why?
If you look first of all, if you look at the premise, Glenn, of bringing in low-skilled labor, it's based on the idea that there's a labor shortage for lower-skilled jobs. There isn't. The number of people living in the United States in the working ages who aren't working today is at a record high. 1 in 4 Americans, or almost 1 in 4 Americans between the ages of 25 and 54 aren't even employed. For African American workers, their labor force participation rate, who don't have a high school diploma, I guess African American males without a high school diploma, has plummeted some 40 percentage points since the mass wave of unskilled migration began. The reality is that if you just use common sense, and yes, I will use common sense, the reason why some companies want to bring in more unskilled labor is because they know that it drives down wages and reduces labor costs. Our question as a government is, to whom is our duty? Our duty is to U.S. citizens and U.S. workers to promote rising wages for them. If low-skilled immigration was an unalloyed good for the economy, then why have we been growing at 1.5% for the last 17 years at a time of unprecedented new low-wage arrivals? It's just the facts speak for themselves. At some point, we're accountable to reality. And on the other hand, like I said, you have ultra-high-skilled workers who are at the back of the line, which makes no sense in the year 2017. Neil, let me go to you.
Now targeting African American male.
Here's
You
a
just
fairly-
brought up the African American
here's a
male
fairly simple
stats. Are you
question.
now targeting the black unemployment rate that is traditionally and historically higher than the average American? Is that what you're looking at?
There's
with
no
this?
doubt, and I'll go to Neil, but there's no doubt, and it's very, very sad and very unfair, that immigration policy, both legal and illegal, over the last several decades, has a deleterious impact on African American employment in general, and certainly African American males, and it's been quite tragic. And we as a country have to have a conversation about that. Neil?
Okay, so thanks very much. So one of the arguments made against this bill is that large-scale immigration will increase the total number of jobs. Senator Graham, for example, said he wants more immigration to bring in more restaurant jobs, more resort jobs, bed cleaning jobs, and such like. Is it better for this country to have more jobs or higher wages and higher productivity for Americans?
Well, I think at the end of the day, President Trump's been clear that he's a pro-high-wage president. He ran as a pro-high-wage candidate, and that's what this policy will accomplish. At the same time, to the point about economic growth, we're constantly told that unskilled immigration boosts the economy. But again, if you look at the last 17 years, we just know from reality that's not true. And you look at wages, you can see the effects there. If you look at the labor force, you can see the effects there. And so again, we're ending unskilled chain migration, but we're also making sure that the great inventors of the world, the great scientists of the world, the people who have the next great piece of technology can come into the United States and compete in a competitive application process, a points-based system that makes sense in the year 2017. All right, let me go to you.
Two questions. One, you did personalize it with the New York Times, so normally this wouldn't be a question, but will the Trump organization stop bringing in foreign workers on visa programs to set an example for other businesses in the interim before this bill becomes law?
Well, as you know, the only way to have immigration policy work is it has to be national, it has to be uniform. You can't have different rules and different procedures for different companies. This bill, of course, doesn't deal with guest workers and temporary non-immigrant visas, which is, I think, what you're asking about, and that's a separate thing. But the president was clear, if you go back and look at his debate on this during the primary, where he said, as a businessman, my responsibility is to operate my business according to the laws of the United States as they exist. He said, as president, my responsibility is to pass laws that make sure we have an immigration system that prioritizes American workers. He said that throughout the campaign, and he said it as a candidate, and he said it now. But just as a technical matter, you're talking about a different aspect of the immigration system. Today we're talking about the green card system, but it's a good question. Let me move on over there.
Thank you,
No,
Stephen.
this hold on a second. Over
Thank
here.
you, Stephen. Just to take the question in another direction, USA Today and others have shown that over the last 7 years there's been a negative flow of immigration across the southern border. And of course, unemployment is at perhaps a 10-year low right now. So will there be enough workers in the southwest states if this policy were to go into effect?
Well, yeah, so I think we're talking about different things, and I appreciate the question. Net migration overall has been at a record pace. You're talking, I think, just about some questions about net migration illegally across the southern border. We're talking today about green card policy. Every year we issue 1 million more green cards, and it just keeps adding on every year after year after year. And so the supply of foreign labor is at a record high. I think the foreign-born population right now is 45 million. I think there's 25 million foreign workers in the United States. All right, right there. Yep.
Thank you, Stephen. Two questions for you. First, does the Trump administration plan to defend the DACA program if Texas and 8 other states bring a lawsuit challenging it in court?
Well, we are not going to make an announcement on that today because there is ongoing litigation, and DOJ and DHS are reviewing that. But I will say that whatever we do is going to prioritize the interests of American citizens and workers.
Stephen, Zoe Daniel.